Hey folks, Seth Liebson here. As we watch cities burn, statues being torn down, and calls to defund the police, if you haven't already, it may be time to think about personal protection. Guns Etc. has 10,200 square feet of guns, ammo, safes, and a staff that will work with you to find the best firearm for your situation. So stop by their huge store in Mesa or click on gunsetcetera.com and have access to over $400 million in firearms and accessories. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back, and happy August 27th, 2020. I dedicate this monologue to baby girl Reagan Trapsonian, who was born yesterday to some very proud parents and grandparents. Here's what the main story in the Arizona Republic told us this morning about last night's convention, and I quote, "The program Wednesday was, as the president might say, low energy, with no major headline speaker beside the vice president and few bold-faced names. While the Democrats' convention last week included musical performance and celebrity guests, Trump's on Wednesday became a little more than a series of speeches delivered one after the next," close quote. Who were those celebrity guests last week, those bold-faced names? Common? Julia Louis-Dreyfus? Aren't you glad they gave us their political and cultural wisdom last week? Low energy last night, no major headline speakers beside the vice president? Well, maybe we don't think it important to hear too terribly much from rappers and people who play the vice president as they use homophobic slurs against the current actual vice president. But wait, maybe we do think Lou Holtz has something of a Q rating, and maybe, just maybe, we really venerate people like Sister Deirdre Byrne, a nun, a physician, and a full colonel in the U.S. Army. Maybe to a big slice of America, people of great achievement and moral force like her matter to us. And maybe the world. And maybe just a little more than the ladies formerly known as the Dixie Chicks. Maybe we think a culture is saved by people like Sister Dr. Byrne and not former stars from sitcoms. Maybe we think her testimony of saving human lives here and in Afghanistan and throughout the Middle East and Africa is more important than the whitewashing of the former president whose direct actions led to a humanitarian and refugee crisis in Syria and the Middle East that disrupted the lives of over 6 million people who are now refugees. Maybe we think, and a big slice of America thinks, the era of professional sports could use more of and misses people like Lou Holtz. You know, back when professional sports was about professional sports, competition, achievement, fair rules, and a dose of God and patriotism that kicks it all off. And not just another venue for multiple Democratic Party conventions where isolated grievances become the cause for dishonoring the flag and the country. And maybe, just maybe, after years of pink ribbons and walks and marches about cancer awareness, particularly breast cancer, and all the stigma our society needs to address, maybe, just maybe, the personal and emotional testimony of a 32-year-old highly articulate female White House press secretary would be cause for attention, if not victory, in a long and important cause. But to the Arizona Republic, no celebrities like the Democrats, just a series of speeches, low energy, few bold-faced names. I wonder what kind of society and culture we would have if Deirdre Byrne were a bigger name in this country, perhaps a bigger or bolder face name than, say, the ladies known as the Dixie Chicks. You can judge a culture, in part, by what it esteems and what it respects. You can judge a newspaper that way, too. And I think both the paper and the culture have been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. But maybe, just maybe, too, it has been the neglect of our failing cultural indicators, the neglect of concern for our culture, that has brought us to this state. What state? A state of downgraded patriotism, a state of enforced and coerced professions of political belief, a state of record-high depression and suicide and drug use rates, a state of children thinking they have nothing more to live for than to riot, loot, and burn down the businesses and cars, homes of others while shouting death to America, if not death to cops. A state of journalism that has become nothing more nor less than the house organ of a single political party. A state of social media that decides what is and is not opinion and what is and is not fact based on the preferences of recent college graduates. A state of education that teaches the merits of every culture and economic system but our own, or when it teaches our own, gives none of the benefit to our own as it gives to systems of others that they teach, that treats our own in a manner that would be cause for claims of ethnocentrism and bigotry, were it said about any other culture they teach about. A state of civility that teaches and believes law enforcement is more criminal than law breaking. Conservatives understand policy very well, but they look around and they ask me, they ask you, how did we get here? How did we lose so much from education to entertainment to athletics to media, every single cultural institution? We might as well add the church and synagogue too. Well, we understand policy. As I said, I don't think we understand culture well enough. We thought policy would drive culture. We thought argument and reason would win the day. But what we forgot or never learned was what happens when we surrender, first little by little, and then more and more. We lost confidence in our own arguments and the justness of our own causes as they were slowly taken over, here and there, little by little, and then more and more. Yes, maybe they are right. There are virtues to Marxism, after all. The literacy rates, after all, are so high. Yes, maybe they are right. America is less a force for good in the world than others who promise paradise. Yes, maybe they are right. Life doesn't matter when claims of individual autonomy in the name of freedom are weighted against it. Yes, maybe they are right. To get beyond prejudice, we must engage in a well-intended form of reverse prejudice. Yes, maybe they are right. Who's to say we are better than those who engage in torture and suppression of women and minorities simply because we don't do that here, and they have a tradition of doing that there, and no tradition can be ab initio better than any other. We're all human beings, after all. Yes, maybe they are right. It is better to teach what is wrong in our country than what is right, and maybe it is better to elevate the exceptions and departures to or above the level of the norms and the guideposts. Yes, maybe they are right that Shakespeare and Aristotle are not better than Rigoberta Menchú and Audre Lorde. Yes, maybe they are right. One's skin color does matter. Yes, maybe they are right. Economics determines or justifies behavior. Yes, maybe they are right. Property and earned income is worse than promises of collective distribution made by those who promise their empowerment will be just. Yes, maybe they are right that fathers don't matter. Yes, maybe they are right men and manhood don't matter. Yes, maybe they are right children no more than adults. Yes, maybe they are right. Maybe we have no right to judge others' behavior because who's to say? Yes, maybe they are right that maybe brains are less important than lungs and autonomy and individualism are more important than sobriety and sanity. Yes, maybe they are right. We should hand out and make more available harmful drugs rather than try to stop their use because autonomy, individualism, and who's to say? Yes, maybe they are right. We don't need nuns or military or police. Maybe they are right. We can remove the organ and demand the function. We can make men without chests and expect of them virtue and enterprise. We can laugh and honor and expect no traitors. We can castrate and bid the geldings be fruitful. After all, yes, maybe they are right. Who's to say who or what chooses a person to be a man or woman anyway? If you recognize just that last part, it's from C.S. Lewis, arguing, of course, the opposite. And before he argued that opposite, he wrote this, quote, "Without the aid of trained emotions, the intellect is powerless against the animal organism. I had sooner play cards against a man who was quite skeptical about ethics, but bred to believe that a gentleman does not cheat, than against an irreproachable moral philosopher who had been brought up amongst sharpers." Culture. What have we surrendered and what have we maintained? And by the surrender, are we happy with where we are? Some years ago, William Bennett gave a speech where he said this, quote, "When we are talking about culture, we are talking about the values environment in which we live. And most important, that environment of values, signals, and directions, the green lights, yellow lights, and red lights, which comprise the environment in which we raise our children. At its best, I think the culture offers a view of the good life, standards of right and wrong, and ways in which responsible individuals ought to behave. It also offers a perspective on things like knowledge, work, virtue, and beauty. It is about matters that we attend to intentionally and with some purpose and focus. Culture matters. There are a lot of research studies that tell us that what is in the culture, the signals that are sent, what people value and what values people have has a lot to do with what people will do, how they will behave, and even in some circumstances, how they will turn out. Culture helps shape the beliefs and convictions, the internal compass that determine individual behavior. But culture is not simply about matters of individual behavior. When we are talking about the culture, we are also talking about our collective social agenda, our work together. The state and health of our culture determines broad social and civic purposes. For example, how we think of our schools, our colleges and universities, our churches, our entertainment, our art, and our literature. The state of our culture tells us a lot about what things we value and the kinds of purposes we as a people will strive toward. So how did we get here? By giving the wrong answers to the wrong questions that we cowed ourselves into believing were smart, intellectual, and enlightened questions. By tolerating the wrong things at small levels until we, living with them for so long, started endorsing them at larger and larger levels. In his Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle argues that the aim of education is to make the pupil like and dislike what he ought, and that would have the greatest bearing on character and virtue. Over time, it would also have the greatest bearing on our culture. The left gets this and distorted it. We on the right must get this and correct it, and soon. What we honor matters. For we now, it appears, have fully confused honor with celebrity and fame. An army colonel and physician, a nun dedicating her life to the least among the world is just another in a line of speakers, no major headliner, not a musical performer or celebrity. And this was written in the paper as a criticism of the former, a praising of the latter. Beware the society and culture that honors and confuses performers, rappers, and comedians, the vulgar, with the heroic, the noble, the faithful, and the beautiful. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.